Okay, thank you very much, Ben, for having me here. Thank you very much for organizing this amazing event. So yes, today we're going to talk about why, from my point of view, Azure SQL MI is the best platform as a service option. Platform as a service means that, in our case, Microsoft will handle the platform for you. I will very quickly introduce myself because I have only 10 minutes. I am Gonzalo Bissio, a data and AI senior specialist working at Microsoft. Contact everything, you have it there. That's it. So today we're going to cover this small agenda, I would say. I received, as we were talking before with Ben, this question: why should I choose Azure SQL MI? Why am I seeing a lot of, I would say, blog posts saying, hey, you should move to Azure SQL MI, and Microsoft is near to me saying, hey, move to Azure SQL MI because that is the future, blah, blah, blah. We're going to talk compatibility, cost, security, etc., etc., etc. Some question that I often receive for Azure SQL MI. So, I mean, I work with cloud providers since like 6 years, more or less. I have a bunch of migrations. And one of the pain, I would say, on migrating stuff from on-prem to Azure is moving the data from on-prem to Azure. I remember working with Azure SQL Database, which is one of the, oldest services in Microsoft. I remember moving data very hard, I would say, from on-premises to Azure. But one of the good things for Azure SQL MI is that you can just backup and restore a database. You can just, I would say, split the backups in, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 pieces and then restore them from a blob storage. That is one of the amazing advantages of using Azure SQL MI. Besides, in case that you have, I would say, a short migration window and you want to use an online migration way, you can use our database migration services, or you can use log replace services, which is in preview. I mentioned this because sometimes on the companies you can't use preview features or services. Well, this will be in GA soon. But also, I remember talking with 3 or 4 customers last month. One of the things that comes up was that, hey, I want to migrate my database and I want to forget about migrating this database in the future. This is one of the huge advantages from Azure SQL MI. It's like you are moving your database from, I would say, on-prem or infrastructure as a service in case that you are using VMs. And you want to forget about migrating your database. Well, Azure SQL MI gives you this. You always will be on the latest versions. In fact, today, if you create an Azure SQL MI and if you want to use compatibility level 160, you can do that. Do you have the features for SQL 2022 enabled? The answer is no, but you will see that compatibility level 160 is already there. In fact, when you create it, you will see TMDB compatibility level 160. So you will be always on the latest SQL version. Besides, this is handled by Microsoft. You don't need to do anything. This will be patched automatically, so you don't need to care about anything. In fact, some new, I would say, improvements, some new features are tested first in Azure SQL MI or Azure SQL Database, and then it will be released for on-prem or EAS. Honestly, this is amazing. Compatibility. Well, if you use Azure SQL Database, I assume that you find some limitations, such as cross-database queries. The migration thing is not easy sometimes. Also, link servers, jobs, etc., etc., etc. One of the good things about Azure SQL MI is that it's almost 100% compatible with on-premises or IaaS. There are some limitations like file tables or file stream, or for example, in-memory TMDB in case that you are using it, because they are not yet enabled in Azure SQL MI. But the majority of the features are available here. So you don't need to worry about, I would say, a strange thing like cross-database query. That is one of the things that, blows my mind sometimes in Azure SQL Database. A very good thing is that studying SQL, I would say, the post is for SQL 2019, but also I saw it in SQL 2017. It's like, there are, the product team took the decision to not remove any more code, I would say, from the SQL itself. So there was not any code changes, I would say, any breaking change that kill us, every time that we migrate. So that is awesome because I moved to Azure SQL MI. It is easier, I would say. And starting SQL 2022, as you saw on the Microsoft Ignite, we have two amazing things from my point of view. One is the possibility to backup and restore directly from Azure SQL MI to on-prem or to infrastructure as a service. You can move the backup now. I would say some unofficial. I mean, I tested sometimes backup and restore databases when some or the latest 2019 CUs came up. I was able to backup, but officially that is not supported. In SQL 2022, that will be supported. The same for example, Windows authentication. I would say it's in public and private preview because you need to sign to a specific site. In case that you want it, just let me know. That is amazing because you can, let's say that you test Azure SQL MI, you test the cloud, and you want to come back to infrastructure as a service or on-prem, well, you can just backup and restore. Another big thing is, as I mentioned on the chat that we were having with Ben, is that, hey, we have some regulation that we need to have, for example, our backups in our country. I saw some solutions from some customers that we have to schedule the backups, execute the backups with copy-only option, and then downloading it to our data center, just in case we have some audits, I would say. So that is another thing. But as I mentioned, SQL 2022, I would say a hybrid database, I would say. But I mean, I think that based on my point of view, I mean, we are having more and more improvements. We have more and more new feature and releases. So for me, I love this service. Cost. I mean, this is a very big question, because sometimes we hear that, hey, this is very cheap, I mean, you need to migrate from your IaaS or on-prem because of the cost, blah, 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 blah. So here we have two big things. One is the Azure Hybrid Benefit, in where you can move your on-prem or infrastructure as a service license in case that you have an Azure subscription or software assurance. So you can save that cost. Obviously, if you are not moving, if you are not migrating and you are creating a service, you need to have available licenses in order to say, hey, Microsoft, I'm going to use these licenses from the portal to Azure SQL MI to save some cost. But the other one is like you can have these Azure reservations. You can reserve the service for 1 or 3 years. So you will be saving more cost. In case that you need any help, you have my contact. You can reach out to me for reservations or for Azure Hybrid Benefit. There is a calculator that you can say, hey, I have 4 or 8 pickers, and I want to move these licenses from the portal to the service itself. I mean, I know that sometimes you hear that, hey, I mean, you can save a lot of cost, but always, I mean, you can use the Azure calculator. You have the link there in case that you want to calculate and you want to say, hey, I mean, what is the estimation of this service? So you can use that. And the last thing about security, that, I mean, security is a big thing for all of the companies. One of the good things that you need to care about is that by default, Azure SQL MI is close to internet. That is a huge thing because, as you know, Azure SQL database is open to internet. Obviously, you need to assign the minutes that will be able to connect to the service, or you need to create the rules for the different IPs. The good thing here is that everything is managed through VNets. So by default, this service will be close to internet. So that for me is amazing. I don't need to care about anything rather than creating, or you create your service VM or whatever you want to connect here on the same VNet that you create your managed instance, or you do the famous VNet peering. But the other very good thing that I mentioned, I think before, is that Windows authentication is in public or private preview. So, I mean, one of the things that happened to me a lot is like, hey, I migrate to Azure SQL MI, you know, I'm trying to use Windows authentication and it is not working. That is something that I hear a lot, because today you can use Azure Active Directory, 3 seconds. So now it's in preview, Windows authentication. We think that this soon will be, I don't know, public available, but let's see. And my Rocky gave, yes, 10 minutes. I think that I did it right. Yes, like Rocky. So if you have any question, just let me know. You have my contact. So thank you very much, Ben, for this, for having me here. And I think that we need to move to the next one.